And welcome back, everybody. Last time, as you might remember, we covered the scenarios of the First Crusade. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the remaining scenarios of this title, Crusades Book I. We're going to look at the battles and sieges that led up to the Second Crusade, and then, of course, the battles and sieges of the Second Crusade itself. So, let's go ahead and push on. Now, here we come to the siege of Arsuf, which took place on the 12th. This is 12th of December, 1299. That's my birthday. I get tongue-tied saying my birthday, I guess. But anyway, you see Godfrey, who is now the protector of the Holy Sepulchre. He's going to be coming up with his soldiers from Jerusalem, and he's going to be marching towards the city of Arsuf in an attempt to take out that town that is going to be a thorn in the back of the kingdom of Jerusalem. So he's going to be outnumbered, though. If we take a look at the unit's strengths, you can see that the Crusaders are going to be outnumbered almost 2 to 1. So you got to be very careful here. You're going to have to plan this out and make sure that you breach carefully. You can move once you have breached the walls. Then you can, one strategy is to move along the walls and eliminating the units. Remember, if there's nowhere to retreat, then the defenders will not just simply jump off the wall. They will be eliminated if they are defeated in a melee. The exception with that would be if there was a stairwell that they could retreat down. If we zoom up a little bit here, you can see that these tower hexes, they have interior access. So that means soldiers can either climb up or climb down. If they're forced to retreat and they're already on this hex, then they can move down into the interior from the tower hex. So just kind of keep it in mind. But if they don't have that tower hex access and they're blocked from being able to retreat by either enemy or friendly troops, then they will be eliminated. Anyway, whichever side you pick, it will be a tough battle. So plan your strategy carefully, please. Now, from the siege of Arsuf, you can see that there are a series of non-siege scenarios. For example, here we have the Battle of Melitene, the Battle of Merzavin, the first and second battles of Heraclea or Heraclea, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And then we have the first and second battles of Ramla, and then we come to another siege, the siege of Acre. Let's just take a fast look at some of these battles here. First of all, this battle of Merzavin is what's considered a battle from the Crusade of 1101. However, it doesn't take on the number of a crusade. It's not like the Second Crusade or the Third Crusade. It's simply the Crusade of 1101. And you can see here that this is a little bit different here. The Crusaders are going to find themselves outnumbered. They are going to be in Anatolia. They're going to be fighting the Sultanate of Rum and the Danishmends, and they were enemies, but now they're coming to ally themselves together so that they can fight and avenge the First Crusade by wiping out as many of the Crusaders as possible. Now you'll notice here if I remove the labels that you can see a exit hex over here in the upper left-hand corner. So the goal of the Crusaders in this battle here is to make their way to this exit hex and then start removing friendly units. Now you gain points when you remove units from the map, and as a matter of fact, you gain the same number of points by removing your own troops as if they were going to be destroyed by the Muslims. So however many points the Muslims would have gained by killing you, that's how many points you will gain if you can get to the exit hex and remove yourself from the field of battle. So basically the object here is to avoid complete destruction by the Muslims coming at you from every direction. They're going to try to come in from behind. They're going to flank you. There's a number of crusaders that came on this crusade, anywhere from Italians, Burgundians, French, and then we have also a contingent of Byzantines. So they're going to be fighting their way out and trying to save themselves, as will the Crusaders from Western Europe. But whatever you decide, it will be a tough battle. It's definitely a tough battle for the Crusaders, and it will also be a tough battle for the Muslims because the Muslims are going to, even though they outnumber the Crusaders typically have a better quality range and slightly better weaponry. So that kind of compensates a little bit for the fact that they're going to be outnumbered. So let's take a look at some other battles here. Now we come to the first battle of Heraclea, and you can see that the Crusaders are going to be outnumbered and surrounded yet again. So it's going to be very difficult that the Muslims are going to come at them basically from all sides. Uh, Heraclea was an unwalled town, so they can't retreat into that and seek shelter from there. So they're going to again have to make their way out to an exit hex, and you can see the exit hex off to the west. So that's the direction that they're going to have to move in order to safely evacuate. And basically, they're going to be trying to save themselves. There's two exit hexes. They can go for either one of them or both of them, but they're going to have to do so very quickly because if they don't, then they're going to find themselves surrounded and quite possibly massacred to a man. So if you're the Crusader, try to avoid that. If you decide to be the Muslims, then have at it there. If you can surround the Crusaders and get them from all different sides, then that's the way to go. So anyway, good luck to you, whichever side you choose to be. The next battle we're going to review is the Siege of Acre. There were two sieges of Acre almost back to back in 1 year, followed by the next. In this first one here of 1103, you can see that the Crusaders again are on the outskirts of the city. If you can, try to isolate the city itself by putting men and zones of control where these gates are, and then pick your timing and pick your gates and the walls that you want to assault. Try to eliminate the wall defenders as much as you can before you put up the siege towers, because you want the defenders to be as weakened as much as possible. You can see here that I've changed the 2D over to the alternate selections, which are the silhouettes. Oh, hey, just take a look here real quick here. I'll just take a look at this Crusader. These are archers, and they're actually most of them are animated in a way. So if I double click and select these archers here and then change their formation, you can see they're going to go from column formation, and now you can see they're ready to launch their arrows. So they're in now line of battle. And also you can take a look at the spearmen here. If I were to change their formation, you can see now where they have their spears out in front of them. Pretty cool effect, I think. But anyway, these are another selection of 2Ds that you can choose from the graphical. These are the alternates, and in a little bit here, I'll show you the NATO selections that we have. But again, here, this is the Battle of Acre in 1103. By the way, I'm going to forego giving you a lot of the history lesson of these battles here because that would simply take up a little bit more time than I think we want to take. So just kind of make sure that you take a moment to look at the scenario description, because in the scenario description you'll see quite a bit of the history. For example, this is the second siege of Acre, almost exactly a year later in 1104. You can see the scenario briefing. I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see there's quite a bit of information here. Some of them are longer than others. I try to give some as much factual information as I can without necessarily, making you read a book. But enough of the general background and what to look forward to, and then what to do as the one side or the other. So this is the second battle of of Acre. And in this battle here, you can see that there's some ships involved. These are going to be blockading the ships and keeping the Fatimid fleet from reinforcing the defenders. By the way, I didn't mention this, but in the first siege of Acre, there were Fatimid galleys that came into the harbor and brought in reinforcements to the defenders. But because we have this vast number of 70 ships generously donated by the Genoese, these are Genoese galleys, and they are assisting in the blockade. So now uh, the Crusaders are going to be coming in, and they're also going to have the benefit of the Genoese fleet to keep them, isolated as much as possible. So just kind of make sure that you do your best to isolate these gates, and then the troops on the inside will be at a severe disadvantage. Now, following the second siege of Acre was the Battle of Haran. You can see here that this is not a siege scenario. This is an open field scenario, and the Muslims are going to vastly outnumber the Crusaders at the beginning of the battle. Let's just take a quick look here at the strength. You can see here that there's under 3,000 under King Baldwin II and almost 15,000 of the Seljuks. But not to worry a whole lot about that if you are the Crusader, because you will have reinforcements coming in. They're basically going to be coming in from the north, from Haran, and moving in south to help the Crusaders that are already on the map. Just kind of make sure here that you keep your eye out for the Muslims who are trying to flank you, because they are going to do their best to come in behind you. The AI has also some tricks up its sleeve, so you may find it trying to come along your flanks and your rear even, and trying to take out as many Crusaders as possible here. So just keep your eye on the ball. Make sure you know what your victory conditions are. We can take a look at it real quick here. In order for you to win the battle here, it's going to start out as a Crusader major defeat, and to win, you're going to have to accumulate 1,000 points more than the Muslims. So it's a tough fight ahead, but I have every confidence in you if you choose to decide to be the Crusader. If you choose to be the Muslim, then again, use your numbers to quickly dominate the battlefield. Don't waste any time here. I mean, as in most battles, especially medieval battles, time is of the essence. Do not give the enemy the opportunity to form good lines of defense. You want to get in behind them, flank them, isolate them, and destroy them. So best of luck to you, whichever side you choose to be. Oh, hey, one more thing here before I leave this battle. I wanted to point out to you that in a few of the other battles we talked about, there were exit hexes for the Crusaders. This battle actually has an exit hex for the Turks. So as the Crusader, you want to prevent them not only from just outright destroying you, but you also want to keep them from exiting off the map. And the artificial intelligence will do that if it has the opportunity. And obviously, if you're playing against a human player, the human player is going to do the same thing. So again, best of luck to you, whichever side you choose to be. Next, and another very interesting battle to play, is the Battle of Artah. It kind of combines a land battle and a siege battle all at the same time. If you take a close look, you'll see that the Muslims already have a large force on the map, in addition to their forces in the city. You can see that the Crusaders are going to want to do two different things here. They're going to want to besiege the city, penetrate the city, and capture the city. but also they're going to need to fight against the Muslims who are already on the outside of the city. Now, keep in mind, if you were to play the Muslim player, you could actually go into the city and defend it through the gates because you have free use of the gates because, well, you own the gates, right? So you could go into the city, defend the city, and then if you wanted to at a later time, you can use the gates to go outside. You can, friendly troops on the inside can do that, or you can, just sit back and defend from the inside. Whatever you choose to do, I'm sure will be the right choice. So just make plan carefully, and the enemy will be yours. So good luck, best of luck, whichever side again you choose to be. All right, here everybody here. Now here we are at Tripoli. This is going to be the siege of Tripoli, and on this day of battle, July 12th, 1109, you have the Crusaders here going to besiege the Muslim-held town of Tripoli. By the way, if you're a Marine here, this is not the shores of Tripoli from the song, because that Tripoli is the Tripoli of North Africa. This is the Tripoli of the Levant on the Eastern Mediterranean. So anyway, you can see that the Crusaders here are poised to attack the city from various locations. Again, my recommendation is that you isolate the city as much as you can, hopefully early on, and then the besiegers, or rather the defenders, will become isolated, and they will gain fatigue with each turn starting on the second turn after the isolation begins. So not only will defenders be at a disadvantage from just the fact that they are isolated, but they will also have to suffer the effects of fatigue, which will be accumulating. So if they're not careful, they can very quickly find themselves at maximum fatigue. Well, not very quickly here. They'll gain roughly about 45 points of fatigue for each turn, and it goes up to 900. So you can do the math on how long that'll take here. But there's only 27 turns, and it'll take a little while before complete isolation can take effect. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about that if you are the Muslims, but just be aware of it. That's the main thing. And if you're the Crusader, again, do your best to try to isolate the defenders before you mount any serious attack, because there's some mean defenders in there, and they're going to fight hard to keep their city. So if you don't have them isolated, if you can't put them at a disadvantage, you yourself are going to be the disadvantaged. So do your best to take on the enemy, and plan well, advance prudently, but again, don't waste any time. Oh, and by the way, too, I would probably recommend that you not waste your ammunition shooting at the various siege engines on top of the walls, because they're very well defended and they are very hard to hit. If I were you, I would use the time more wisely to eliminate the defenders, like the infantry. These various archers here. Try to take care of these as much as you can here, and don't waste your time firing at the siege engine defenders. They can be hit, they can be destroyed. It does take a lot of time and effort. And trust me when I tell you, your time will be better spent if you are using your ranged weapons, whether they be crossbowmen, archers, or your catapults, or your ballista. But try to take out the wall defenders first, because when you come up with your siege engines, you want to have most of them eliminated as much as possible. Then you can start penetrating into the city, and then eventually gain the victory hexes that you need in order to achieve the victory that is desired. So again, best of luck to you. It's not going to be an easy siege, regardless of what size you choose. All right, now following the siege of Tripoli, we come to the Battle of Shazar. And then you can see, if you look at the file selection dialog, there's a number of non-siege battles from Sarmen to Ager Sanguinis, the Battle of Hab, Battle of Yidna, and so on. Some of these historically were major crusader victories, and some of them were very catastrophic defeats uh, for the crusaders here. So you'll have the opportunity of changing that outcome from what was the historical outcome to something of your own making. So be sure to treat each battle one at a time. Again, read through the description. This battle here, for example, was on September 13th, 1111. The next one here a couple years later on 1113, Sarman 1115, Ager Sanguinis on 1119, the Battle of Hob 1119, Yibna 1123, and so on here. Let's take a look at Yibna, for example, and we'll just kind of again take a quick look here. You can see the city itself is incidental, and it's not actually going to be the subject of the battle. You have the Muslims coming up from the south, west, and then you'll see that the Crusaders over here in the northeast are going to try to intercept the Muslims coming up and do damage to them before they could actually try to lay siege to Yimne. So it's an interesting battle. It's certainly not going to be an easy one. Again, the Crusaders are going to be outnumbered. If we take a look at the strength real quick here, we can see that the army of Jerusalem has roughly 8,300 men, and the Fatimid Caliphate is coming out with a roughly 15,000. But again, the Crusader qualities and weaponry is slightly better, so that compensates a little bit for the fact that they're outnumbered. I have played this in head-to-head, so if you plan on doing that, it's a good battle that you'll enjoy. But it's also a good battle. Again, I think all the battles are pretty much. Take a look and see who the intended players are. Some of them are more intended to be one side over the other. So, for example, here, if you look at the again the selection here, we'll find this battle again near the bottom here. And then you can see it's intended to be played as the Crusader Alliance against the Islamic AI or head-to-head. So that's the intended recommendations here, but of course you can play it any way you want to play it. So anyway, best of luck to you on how you decide to do that. So we're going to move on to the next battle here because we want to kind of not make this video too long, okay? Here we go. Now here we're at an interesting siege. This is the siege of Tyre, and this was in 1124. This is the last day of the siege, June 29th. And you can see the Crusaders here are poised to launch their attack into the city, and if successful, take out these various objectives, the objective hexes as much as possible here. If you are going to be the Muslim player here, you have a relatively small area to defend, so you got good interior lines. Of course, the city of Tyre itself was an interesting battle. If you're up on your ancient history, you'll know that this was one of the long sieges that Alexander the Great actually had to build this neck in order to connect the mainland here with the city itself. So this is still present to the day, and the Crusaders are going to take advantage of the industriousness of Alexander's army and going to take on the Crusaders. Now, by the way, I would like to point out that because it's going to be too easy to isolate the city of Tyre, I have put in a supply source. So for this particular battle, and you can see the supply source is right here, okay? The only way to eliminate the effectiveness of the supply source is to occupy it. So if you can gain access to the walls, walk along the walls, and then eventually come in behind and take out that supply source, then you can isolate it. But in not being able to do that, You won't have the defenders isolated, so you're just going to have to go in the old-fashioned way here without weakening them by extra fatigue and besiege. One of the reasons, though, by the way, here is that we have the supply sources because the city itself was supplied by sea by smugglers bringing in relatively small quantities of supplies, but enough to keep the city from suffering the effects of isolation. So, again, this is going to be one of those battles that you have to plan very carefully. Otherwise, the defenders are going to have the advantage over the crusading besiegers. So take careful note of what you need to do and plan carefully because if you don't, then the Muslims are going to have their way with you, so to speak. So again, have fun. And again, and by the way, that's always the number one object here is to have fun. So we hope primarily that is what is going to happen as you play these games here. But we also want you to learn a little bit of history and the importance and the effects of the Crusades down to this day. I mean, it's still going on. I don't want to get into that necessarily here with you, but just suffice it to say that the impact of the Crusades carries on to this very day. But anyway, you will learn a significant amount of history by playing these games. If you're not familiar with the Crusades, now's your opportunity to take note of it and learn. So I'm going to pause it here for a quick second and move on to the next battle. Now we're moving closer to the battles that are going to be the catalyst for the Second Crusade. Now first we're going to come to the Battle of Aleppo. Now this battle here was fought in 1125. And this is an interesting battle here because this is going to demonstrate that the Crusaders were willing to be flexible when it came to their mentality towards Muslims. So you can see in this battle here that the Crusaders are actually going to be allied with a Muslim force over here in the northern part of the city. So these green, now these are light green, okay? So these green tinted counters here are actually going to be Crusader allied Muslims. Okay, they're going to fight and look like Muslims. You can see they have the Muslim flag and so forth. But you can see they're a little more light green versus the darker green of the opponents. Just kind of keep in mind here, this is, and there's a great many examples of where the Crusaders made either treaties or alliances with other Muslims. So whereas the Crusade you might have thought was just intent on killing all Muslims, that was not the case here. Quite often, their purposes would be aligned with each other, and they would form alliances to fight against either other Crusaders or against Muslims. More often than not, here now, a lot of the Crusaders were sometimes at odds with each other, but there wasn't very much open conflict among the Crusader states, among with themselves. Usually, they would just kind of do a cold shoulder treatment here. If one of them was attacked, and they were at odds with the one being attacked, then they might send for help, and the other Crusader state might not send any help because, well, they aren't inclined to help their opponent here. But they didn't really have too many outright battles with one another here. But oftentimes, though, the Muslims would ally themselves with either other Muslims to fight, kind of a civil war type thing, or they would ally with the Crusaders. And in this case here, you can see that there is a fairly substantial Muslim force in alliance with the Crusaders to fight against the inhabitants and the defenders of Aleppo. Okay, so let's move on. Here we are at the city of Edessa. This was the first major county or principality of the Crusader state. So the first Crusader state to be established. As a matter of fact, it was also the first Crusader state to fall. And this battle here in 1144 was the catalyst because, in fact, it did fall. And this is one of the fewer scenarios in this first title. There's going to be more in book 2, but in book 1 here, there's not a whole lot of besieging opportunities for the Muslims. However, this is one of them here. This will be the battle of a siege of Edessa, and the catalyst again, as I mentioned to you, for the Second Crusade. Now, this is one of the first battles of the Second Crusade. This was October 25th, 1147. What's called the Second Battle of Doram. Um, Almost 50 years after the first Battle of Doram in the First Crusade. However, this second Battle of Doram is going to be a larger affair and is considered one of the first major battles of the Second Crusade, as the Crusaders were making their way to the Levant, and the purpose of the Second Crusade was to retake Edessa. So again, here you'll see where the Muslims are going to pretty much have the Crusaders surrounded, coming along this road, and you can see that in similar battles that we've seen, the Crusaders are going to have to fight their way to not being annihilated. I think the battle actually resulted in a pretty heavy defeat for the Crusaders, but if you are going to be playing as the Crusader, you'll have the chance to change that historical result and maybe come up with a victory for your side. Um, but it should be an interesting battle here. There's a lot of units, so don't be intimidated by that, by the way. I don't have time in this video here to show you the different ways you can do this. But some of the other videos do show it here where, one click can move an entire force. I can, for example, here I can select this force here, and, I could move them all at one time if I wanted to. And so on here. So there's various ways. Just kind of hold down the shift key and then right click on the mouse to move in the direction that you desire. There's other ways of doing it too here, but let's move on to the next battle. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of the battles that comprise the Second Crusade. The Battle of Ephesus, the Battle of the Meander River, the Battle of Mount Cadmus, and then culminating with the final major battle of the Second Crusade, which would be the Siege of Damascus here. I'd like to point out too that one of the battles for the Siege of Damascus is actually the full 4-day battle. It's the longest scenario in the entire uh, title, the first title here, Crusades Book I, and it has 380 turns. I want to show you Mount Cadmus real quick here because it's a little bit different than the other ones because this actually takes place on a mountain top in the dead of winter. This is January 1148. Because of the weather and the mountainous territory, the Turks were not able to come and assault the Crusaders on mounted horseback. So this time it's basically all infantry against the Crusaders who are, coming down this path here and then trying to make their way to Edessa. But you can see that the Muslims are going to pounce on them in this area right here, and if successful, there's not going to be a lot of room for the Crusaders to maneuver in this harsh weather. And historically, it didn't work out too well for the Crusaders, but they were able to save themselves and didn't actually get themselves totally destroyed. Let's take a quick look at the battle or the siege of Damascus, and then we will end it with that, because that's going to be the final battle of the Second Crusade, last major battle anyway. All right, now this is probably one of the biggest maps, or I think it is the biggest map actually, because you have to scroll. The Crusaders are coming up from the south west, and they're going to be attempting to take over the orchards in this area, which is going to give them food and supplies. And then they're going to try to move on to Damascus. Oops, sorry. Trying to get my arrow right here. All right, yeah, here we go. So they're going to try to move on to Damascus. And if we just scroll on over, here's the city itself. But on the initial battle, it's going to mostly take place in the orchards over here. And this is where the Muslims were initially thinking that they could stop the Crusaders, but they didn't. The Crusaders did manage to take over the orchards. They did manage to move on to Damascus. And however, as we know from historical research, that the Battle of Damascus did not turn out too well for the Crusaders. But I'm going to leave it to you with this final note. That has been a real pleasure, showing you the various scenarios that you'll have an opportunity to play if you were to purchase this game. And don't forget, too, there's a demo version available at the WDS website. If you haven't made the decision yet to buy the game and you want to get a taste for how it feels, please have an opportunity to download the free version, and then you can see some of the battles that were included in the book one, and also some additional training battles so that you can get a taste and feel for the Crusades. So again, have a great rest of the day, and thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.